Hello and welcome to the Healthcare Today podcast. Our guest today is Chris Dexter, partner at law firm Weightmans. Today, with reports of cosmetic procedures taking place everywhere from hotel rooms to garden sheds and even public toilets, we're talking about the unregulated Wild West that is the cosmetic sector. As the Women and Equalities Committee calls for an immediate ban on high-risk procedures and warns that further delay is untenable, we will be delving into the legal fallout from this regulatory vacuum and discussing what real reform should look like. A recent report by the Women and Equalities Committee calls for an immediate ban on high-harm procedures like liquid BBLs, Brazilian butt lifts, and liquid breast augmentations. But you note that would amount to a near total ban because few mainstream clinicians will do them anyway. Is that ban realistic, or would it just drive the practice further underground?
I don't actually see this as a total ban. There's regulations that are going to come in. They are putting parameters around the treatment that's being recommended. Whilst the Brazilian butt lifts and the liquid breast augmentations are going to be on the higher end and the most extreme level, they're going to be the most regulated areas of this kind of treatment. The aim of it all is to make the sector safer and to make it safer for patients and to provide tighter controls on those that are actually providing the procedures to make sure that what they're doing isn't going to harm a patient. The whole idea of the regulations is to protect patient safety. That's the grounding issue behind all this. And that's where the thrust of these regulations has been coming from.
Now, the government has previously proposed a tiered licensing framework under the Health and Care Act 2022. The WEC's criticism isn't really about the architecture, it's about the pace. To your mind, what is blocking implementation?
I don't think there is any block to implementation, actually. What's slowing things down is the procedure itself to be able to get the regulations in. Now, that's not a criticism of the speed, that's just what has to happen. If we're protecting patients and we're making sure that the treatments that are being provided is also protecting those that give those treatments, it needs to be a fully assessed, analyzed set of regulations. It needs to go through due process, and there's not actually any blocker happening here. It's just going through the processes that it needs to go to be able to get to the end result and make sure that everybody is happy with the new regulations that are coming in.
Scotland, meanwhile, is now moving decisively with a ban on non-surgical procedures for under 18s, treatment only in regulated healthcare settings, and criminal penalties for non-compliance. Why is Scotland able to act while England stalls?
I don't think England's stalling, but Scotland has grasped the nettle of this. They've been the torchbearers of it, and they are just ahead of England and Wales. That's the only difference. The process to be able to get their regulations enacted seems to be a little swifter than in England and Wales. They've gone through their vote within the Scottish Parliament. It's been voted through. All the MSPs voted for it, and it's now awaiting royal assent. So it has to go down to the national parliament in order to be able to receive royal assent. So there's not actually any blocker. Scotland are just taking the lead. It's something that we can, in England and Wales, look to and see the benefits that they are bringing to this area and how it's protecting patients, how it's making sure that practitioners are working within a framework. And then within England and Wales, we can use that, either adopt it or tweak it so that it's beneficial for those that are practicing within England and Wales.
An article you wrote for Healthcare Today mentioned that insurers are actively commenting on regulatory reform, which is unusual. What are they seeing in their claims data that the public isn't necessarily seeing?
I don't think they're necessarily seeing something different to what the public sees, but what they are recommending is they're risk managers as insurers. They want to make sure that the areas that they are insuring and working in are as risk-free as possible. And if you've got a set of regulations that are going to come in that's going to help manage that risk and reduce it, then that's got to be a good thing for insurers. So that's why they're probably commenting on this. and seeing it as a good thing for them and for those that they insure.
The Women and Equalities Committee also recommends mandatory psychological screening and informed consent training for license holders. It's a big question, but how would you design a screening process that catches the vulnerable patient without being paternalistic?
I'm a lawyer, so I'm not going to be the one that's going to be designing any psychological screening. That's for those that actually work in this area, not for me as the lawyer. But what we do see as lawyers are claims that are brought in relation to consent. So does that patient understand and has given informed consent to the procedure that they're going to undertake? Now, if it's being suggested that there be some form of framework to enable patients to better understand the treatment that they're going to receive and to help practitioners obtain informed consent, then that can only be a good thing. The more people know about what it is that they're going to undergo and the risks and the benefits of that, the better. But it's definitely for those that are working within the area that are actually doing these procedures to produce any frameworks themselves rather than me and as a lawyer to be drafting any psychological thing. That would not be a good thing for the practice.
Totally fair enough. Let's move on. Cosmetic tourism is another layer. Patients go abroad for cheaper procedures and they return with complications. And as an effect, the NHS ends up picking up the tab. Should the government be doing more than just recording those cases? Should there be a public awareness campaign or even a restriction on advertising overseas procedures? Again, I know you're a lawyer, but just to get your point of view on that.
What happens here is that patients know that they can have treatments abroad. They might know that they can have them within the UK, but the cost of that treatment is often higher. Now, what happens is they go away, have the treatment, but the aftercare is the bit that then can impact on the NHS. When people come back and if they have a complication, if they've gone abroad for the treatment, they're then potentially having to get on a plane to go back to have that follow-up treatment if there's something gone wrong. They're more likely to access healthcare local to them if there is a problem post-procedure. That's the impact that can happen on the NHS. The NHS is free at the point of delivery, so therefore they are going to be the ones that are going to be impacted by this aesthetic tourism if things go wrong. It's an understanding of patients that potential risks can happen after a surgery's been provided, especially if it's a big surgery. And that's where the risk comes for the NHS. That's always going to be there if people are receiving treatment out abroad.
You've said that most practitioners want clear, enforceable standards because it creates a level playing field. We've obviously talked about how some countries within the UK are faster off the starting blocks and there are no real blockers from a governmental level, but who in the industry is actually resisting reform?
I don't see any resistance to reform myself. The risk will come from the practitioners that are slower on the uptake in complying with the regulations. The sooner people start to get aware of this likely change in these regulations and working within that framework that seems likely to be coming in, the better. So there's no actual resistance at all. I think it's more of a knowledge management thing. People just need to be aware of it and that it's probably going to be coming in.
To your mind, what can insurers do to help clinicians prepare for any regulations that are or will be coming into force?
So insurers can help practitioners with policies. They can help with learning, consent processes, governance, making sure that the procedures that they are insuring and that their insureds are providing are as low risk as they can be. It's very much a learning and preparation point at this time. We don't actually know what the regulations are going to say in England and Wales. We've got a fair idea because of what's been happening in Scotland, and we've seen the initial drafts that have come through for England and Wales. So we can get an idea of what's going to happen. So that can then enable insurers to work with their policyholders to make sure that things are in place when the actual regulations do come in.
We've talked about how insurers can help clinicians, but from a legal point of view, in terms of taking on new regulatory rules, How can firms like Weightmans help clinicians to make sure that they are compliant?
With regulations that are going to come in, we likely know what they are going to be before they are enacted. Therefore, anybody that we are advising, we can help guide them to make sure that they are in compliance with regulations. But as a law firm and as solicitors, we're often a distress purchase. So we're often after the event when things have not been complied with, and we're then helping that practitioner or that practice to comply or deal with the claim that's come as a result of the non-compliance. That's the learning aspect that we can provide, learning from the claim, learning from the regulatory issue that has happened, how that practice can change in the future in order to make them better and to avoid that risk happening in the future.
Finally, to circle round to the question about the NHS picking up the tabs, the NHS doesn't provide most cosmetic procedures, but it does absorb the consequences: A&E visits, corrective surgery, mental health support. Has anyone, to your mind, calculated the annual cost to the NHS of this regulatory vacuum? And would that figure be enough to really force urgent political action?
I'm not personally aware of a figure being calculated in relation to this. We know colloquially as lawyers that people do access the NHS or private treatment within the UK as a result of medical tourism. We know that claims can be made as a result of care that's been received within the UK following people coming back from medical tourism, particularly that happens in dentistry, because access to NHS dentistry for the procedures that people go abroad for is often minimal, and therefore the provision is private, the cost that's required is high, and people can often make a claim in relation to that cost. So we do see that in the claims data that we have. I'm not aware of any specific figure that's available as to how much this is costing the NHS, but if we might be able to find that out. I don't know the answer to that, I'm afraid.
I think we can safely assume it's a lot, and we'll leave it there. Chris Dexter, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate you talking to us.
Thank you very much.